So this is what we're going to be making in this video. It's a realistic form prototype that uses variables to handle validation, and I'm going to be doing this tutorial in two parts. So the first half is setting up the design, and I'll show you how to do everything from scratch from a blank Figma file, and we'll talk about components and styles. And then in the second half, we'll move on to prototyping and advanced prototyping using variables. So let's jump right in. So we've got our blank Figma file here. I'm just going to hit F and drop on an iPhone 14 frame, and then start making some fields. So we want to do a name, maybe an email address, maybe favorite color, and then maybe a big button at the bottom which says submit. And actually what I'll do is, instead of using rectangles here, I'm going to put that in an auto layout frame. So Shift A makes an auto layout frame, make it a bit larger and give it a stroke there. And actually I'm going to do the same for those. So black stroke, and then this is kind of what we're going to go for. But let's turn these into components and make it look a bit better than just this. So I'm going to grab those two, press Shift A to put them in an auto layout frame, and actually press Shift A on that to give that frame auto layout. We're going to call that input, label, and call this input maybe text / text. And actually this one we could call it box. Maybe change the height of that to 40, set that to fill container, and then set that whole thing to be around 300. Actually what I can do is go over here, add a layout grid, columns, one column, 20, and then that's kind of like our iOS sizing. So now it's a bit easier to size that up properly. Can make that font size a bit bigger, 17, and then maybe give this a bit of a rounded corner. Now, I'm not going to go through the process of making a complete color scale by yourself, but I made a video on that recently about a good way of doing that. Since making that video, I found a really good plugin called Tailwind Color Palettes, and these just add all of the Tailwind color styles to your file. So I just have to load that color palette, press add, and now you can see we've got folders for absolutely every one of the base Tailwind colors. So what that means is I can go in, and for selection colors, I can set it to Slate 800, for example. Now let's press Command Option K to make that a component, duplicate it to get an instance of it, which you can tell from here, and then we're going to take the main component out of the canvas. So that's our input text, and that would work well for our email address. So we can duplicate that down and rename that as email address. Now here in the component, we can set up some properties. So that is our name, and we're going to give that a label property. And what I did there was connected it to a text property. So now you can see on our instances, we can write whatever we want in the sidebar without having to actually dive in to the layers and edit it there. Also on our component settings, we can press the settings icon and press simplify all instances. So now you can see here, we don't have to see all of the layers, which here isn't that useful because there's only one layer hidden, but when you get really complex components, it can really help to simplify instances. So going back to our main component, well, I'm gonna add in some variants. So pressing this button up here, we can get a variant, and we can give it a name like hover, maybe call that one default, so active, and then error. And then I'm also gonna go back and select the main component and add a different type of variant, which will be filled, and that can be false, and then we can do a couple where that's true, and we should rename that to be state. So the default, maybe it looks something like this. We can give it a fill of maybe 50, and I'm going to press Shift G so I can see what that looks like on my canvas there. The hover state, maybe we should make that slate maybe a bit thicker, and then maybe bump that up to cyan 100, maybe that's a bit much. Maybe one of the blues, maybe blue 50. So imagine you've just got these, and then when you hover over them, they have kind of this state. And then for editing, we can do the same. So I can grab that, Command Option C to copy properties, and Command Option V to copy properties. And actually, I think the hover state shouldn't have the thicker outline. Maybe that should just be on the active state, so that's kind of when you're typing in it. And maybe we can give that more of a blue outline, something like that. So this is for when you're typing in. And I'm also going to add in a caret, like a blinking caret, which is how you know you've selected into it. And then maybe for the error state, we're going to give that a red fill and a red border. There we go. So I think that's looking quite good. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to do some quick component prototyping. So I've swapped over to my prototype tab here and changed it to while hovering, we want to see this one. And then on click, we want to see this one. So on tap, change to active. And then I can grab my frame here, shift space to open it up in a preview. And now you can see as I hover that one, it looks like that. And then when I click into it, it looks like that. So I think that's looking really good. You'll have noticed that when I did this, if I reset that prototype, the email address has not kept the right name. So what I'm going to do is just reset all changes and then type in email address again. And now that glitch won't happen. Great, I'm going to make 2 more variants for filled. So we'll set those to filled true. And that can be, actually, let's delete those. And we want to copy the hover state, set that to filled true. And then grab that text element, put it inside the input box, and just write a name there. And actually, we're going to connect that up to a new property. And we'll do that one more time for the active state. And what we'll do this time is we'll add an extra text element for the line divider, and we'll set the auto layout frame to -4. So it looks like you're still typing. And again, we're going to link that value to the value. Now you can see in some of these, I'm not using library colors. So if I click on the main component, go down to my selection colors, you can see that we've got some 000 sneaking in. So just clicking here, I can map that to slate 800. That's useful because if we want to decide overall that we want to make it lighter, we can do that all in one place. The purple, by the way, is being used for the Figma component, so I tend not to change that. And you can see here as well, when I select my main component, we've got an error saying there are conflicting variants, and I think that's this one here. Ah, yes, we didn't set that to true, so that's filled true. So now you can see we very quickly made a really robust input component where we can swap between different states. We can fill it out with just a click. And I should say the reason that that's coming out as a toggle switch here is because here we've labeled the variant, we've given it 2 options, false and true, which just gives it a toggle switch. And then we can control all of those inputs from here. So we can write hello@parvindesign.com and spell that right. And then when we turn that off, it won't show. And I should say for our prototyping, in Figma, you can't actually pull up a keyboard. So what most people do when prototyping flows like this is just set so a click fills it out. So we can add another prototype click. So let's check this again, shift space, hover, 2 clicks should work. Cool, we're making really good progress. I'm gonna speed up along with this next bit for the dropdown because it's a very similar process. So we're gonna call this input text, duplicate it and call it input/dropdown. I'm just going to go and get an icon from lucid.dev, which is the best open source icon pack. So here I've just set the input box to be space between, so the icon is mapped to the end, and this will be the baseline for all of our kind of states. So I can go Command-C to copy that and Command-Shift-R, which is paste to replace. But I want to keep the blue 50, so just update that to blue 50. And then for that active state, we don't really need these 2 states, and therefore we also don't really need filled. And then for that active state, what we want us to do is add a list. So I'm going to option and drag an instance over here, and then I'm just going to duplicate some of these options and then Shift-A around all of them to create a list, call that list, and give it the same rounded corners. Then I'm going to click on the list, hit enter to select all the children, and go to stroke, slate 800, and then just set that to only be the bottom and 1. And maybe actually we don't need slate 800, maybe we should do blue 100, so it's a much more subtle line. And actually set the border radius for the inside options as 0, so you don't have that rounding on the edge. And then give the whole list a blue 100 on the outside and take it off from the bottom one. So we've now got a nice looking list, and I'm going to just Command X that, go to our active state, Command V, and then I'm going to press this button up here which says absolute position. And now the reason I've done the absolute position is if I drag a few more of those, Shift A to put all of our input instances in an auto layout frame. If I change one of these to a drop down, and you can see they appear here in this kind of input folder because I've done input/text, input/dropdown. So change one of them to a drop down. If I change that to active, you can see that it doesn't upset the flow, the auto layout. So if I quickly change this to not absolutely positioned, you'll see it will move one of our inputs down as we expand it and collapse it, which isn't what we want. So by setting this to absolute position, it will kind of just stay in line. So now let's take that and change it back to default, get rid of that extra one. And now let's very quickly do the button. So I'm going to call that button. And again, duplicate it, take the instance off of here. What do we set that to? 40, so we can set that to 40 fixed height. Maybe give it a fill of blue 400, no stroke, and then inside we can give it blue 50, or maybe just white, and make that 17 as well. There we go, so that's a very simple button component. I've just given it a bit of letter spacing and made the font size a bit bigger. Then again, we can add some variants. So hover, pressed, and inactive. And we can call that default and change that to state. And one reason I really love Tailwind colors is because here we can just make it get darker each time. And now we've got a really, really simple button component. And then let's also wrap that in an auto layout frame, set all of the children elements to fill container. And now we're going to call that form. That one can be top, and that one can just stay as button, which is pinned to the bottom. And then we can preview this. So shift space, so name, email address, and then a very simple drop down, which we haven't written out, and then submit. Great, so that's part one. And before we get to part two, let me just say, if you've got any questions at all about any of this, please just drop a comment below. I'm very happy to help you out. Also, if you have ideas for other videos that you'd like to see, please do let me know. This video was suggested by a viewer who watched a different video I made about prototyping, and based on that, I've decided to record this tutorial. So if you found this video helpful, please hit the like button below so more people can see it. And then if you've got other ideas, just let me know and I'll make a video on them. So here's where it gets interesting. I'm going to take off the drop down. I just wanted to show you how to make it, but we're just going to use a second text input. And let's set that height to fixed. So now that when we add any other elements, and set that to space between. So now those elements kind of stay in the same place. And we're going to call this next one favorite color. So that will be a text input instead of our drop down input. So we can just move that out of the way, get rid of that as well. I'm going to make a quick edit to this. So this is a new feature in Figma called multi-edit. If I click on a layer inside of the component and then press Q on my keyboard, it will select all of those matching components. Just going to drop the size down to 13, shift enter to go up and change the space between to 4. And I'm going to press Command D to make a little star component. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to unlink it from our label. So now that star won't update. Change that to red 600. And then grab both of those, Shift A to put them in an auto layout wrapper, and set that to middle, and maybe set that to 0. And we can call that frame label. And then going into it again, just grabbing the star, we're going to connect that to a new property, which is called required. And actually, I'm not going to link the text thing, I'm going to link the layer up here. So clicking that boolean property required to true. And now you can see on our instances, we can easily turn required on and off. So for this form, we'll have email address and favorite color as required fields. Now I'm just going to slide this over to give myself a bit more room. We're going to rename these main frames form 1, form 2. And inside of form 2, we're just going to delete everything. So that would be like a success state. Now up here in local variables, I'm just going to add some variables, and they're going to all be Boolean variables. So the first one is going to be email complete, and then another one, color complete, and then another one, which is form error, let's say. And leave those all as false for now. And then this is the bit where we're kind of breaking the rules of Figma a bit. So I kind of don't recommend doing this because doing this kind of realistic prototyping in Figma is quite extra. I just wanted to show you what can be done, but unless you're really testing the validation, there's not really that much need to make this into a prototype, but you can expand this idea to lots of other scenarios where you might want to use it. And the reason I say that this isn't a good strategy is because we're going to have to duplicate our components for every input that we need filled out to get the error state working. So I'll show you what that means in a bit. But firstly, let's just get the button working. So as we showed before, if we press shift space, the hover states work, and then clicking lets us click into it, and then clicking it again fills it out. We're going to edit this very slightly. So I'm going to get rid of the error state and move this active state up and change this so from while hovering, and then here we'll do touch down to set it to the active, tap again to fill it out, and then we're going to add one more prototype action within the component, which is mouse leave. So 200 milliseconds after the mouse leaves, we're going to kind of say that it's become inactive. So what that looks like now is click, and then as it leaves it, you can see we lose that active state. So that's filled, and then as it leaves it, that completes. Now let's move this over. Input text 1. We'll have input text 2 and input text 3. And so that will be input text 1. The next one along we're going to set to text 2, and the next one along we're going to set to text 3. And the reason we have to use multiple components is because we have to set the variables updating within the component. We can't set it over here on the instances because then it overwrites all of these component connections we've made for the hover and active and filled states. Also, by doing this, we could just write email address and favorite color over here, so we don't have to use text properties anymore. But I'm just going to leave it as it is for now. So what we're going to do is here where we've got mouse leave up, we're going to click here and add an extra action. And this requires advanced prototyping features, so you just have to move your project into not a draft. So once that file is moved, we can press add and then do set variable. And so the first one, we're going to set variable email complete to true. And the next one, we're going to add set variable color complete true. Now, going back to this screen, I'm just going to add a line of text which says, please complete all required fields before continuing. Grab that with the button and then set that to 4 or maybe 8 and set that height to hug. And we can just make that text red 100, and we can not have it lowercase so it's a bit less shouty. So we'll rename that section to bottom. So once we've got our text element here, we're going to link this visibility to whether there's a form error. So we're going to hold down Control on our keyboard and click on this eye icon. This is one of the most confusing parts of advanced prototyping in Figma because it's not obvious that this bit exists, but holding Control on your keyboard, and then we're going to link the eye icon to form error. So that basically means that that text element will only show if form error local variable is set to true. So we're almost there. Now we just go to the submit button here and we go to prototype, add interactions on tap, and we're going to set a conditional. So the conditional is going to say if email is complete and color is complete, then we can navigate to the next page, form 2. Else, we're going to set the variable form error to true. So I'll show you what that does. If we fill out one, but we haven't filled out the others, then the variables won't be set to true. So we're going to get that error message. But then if we reset that and So here, because I made these extra components, I haven't linked those up. So what I'm going to do is just get rid of the variant interactions and then reset them. So name, email, favorite color. Once those are all done and press submit, it will go to form complete. So showing you again, if one of them is completed, but not both of them, it will say please complete all required fields. But then once both of them are completed, we'll get to form complete. So that's how conditional prototyping works. Next, you'll remember that I removed the error state from these input components. We're going to add that back in. And the way we're going to do this, again, is very hacky. I definitely wouldn't recommend doing this in a big library Figma file, or if you've got lots of other designers who aren't familiar with advanced prototyping, but just to show you it's possible. So we're going to grab the first variant from all of these components, an option, and drag them down. So we've got instances outside. And now we're going to wrap these in a component, and I'm just going to call it text1 wrapped, text2 wrapped, and text3 wrapped. And now we're going to replace the instances with these wrapped ones. So I'm just going to copy one over here, click into my form over here, and Command-Shift-R for paste to replace. And do that one more time. And you'll see name, email address, and all that has been removed. So we can go to the instance of the component, double click into it to find the instance of the wrapped component, and then we can update that to say email address. And then if we click on filled, we'll be able to put in our email and then uncheck filled and actually reset that back to default. And same with this last one. So just to check everything is still working, we can see that we've got name, email address, favorite color, and submit still works. And then if we don't do all of it, we still get our error. But now for these, we're going to add error states. So I'm going to go over here to this wrapped component and add a variant. And you can see within the variant, we've still just got an instance of the earlier one with all of our interactions set up properly. And I'm going to give the property error, or maybe let's say incomplete, and give the first variant a property of false and the second one a variant of true. And then we can replace the slate 50 fill with red 50. Now, hopefully you can see what I'm doing. We're now able, because we set these as a boolean variant, we can now change this input to have an incomplete here. And because this is a boolean, we can link it to form error. So all we have to do is link that to form error. And because form error is currently false, it won't show the red. But as soon as form error becomes true, which happens when we press submit and it does the Boolean logic to work out that those haven't been filled in, it will update in red. So I'll do that for this one very quickly. And then link that to form error. So now clicking Shift space here, you can see we've got name, email address. If we press submit, it will highlight the fields which we need to fill out. And then if we fill that one out and then press submit, we'll get to form complete. So, and I should actually take off the required star here. So one more time, if we fill out just the name but nothing else, we get this message saying please complete all required fields, and those fill out in red. And then we can fill those two out and then press submit, and we get to form complete. So obviously my component organization here is an absolute clutter. I've got components nested within components. I've had to duplicate each component for every field that we need to have a required input for. So that's kind of not making use of what we want to use components for, which is to reduce this exact thing. We don't have to create lots and lots of states. So again, this isn't a recommendation. I don't think you should go and do this to all your prototypes, but it's just showing you one of these powerful features of advanced prototyping in Figma. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you want access to this file to dissect it and work out how it works and put it back together, or if you get stuck at any point, you can get a link to this file in the description and you can duplicate it. Just remember to use some of these advanced prototyping features. You can't just have the file in your drafts. You have to move it to a team which has a paid plan. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this video helpful, I'd really appreciate it if you hit like or shared it with someone else who might find this kind of stuff interesting. And I'll see you on the next video. Cheers.